Hi, my name is Jerianne Green, and I am the head of schools here at Step by Step Christian School. And I am going to be teaching a series of trainings on curriculum for 4-year-olds. And I'm glad you're going to be joining us over the next few days. So before we get started, I would like to go ahead and join together in prayer. If you would please join me. Heavenly Father, I want to thank you for this time that we have today. I want to thank you for allowing me to be a part of these women's lives. I want to thank you for the opportunity to not just directly affect children's lives by being a teacher, but to spread that endlessly by giving me the opportunity to teach teachers. I know that is a legacy that will live on long after I am gone, and I appreciate very much that opportunity that you've given me. I want to thank you for each and every one of these women that have chosen to dedicate themselves to your service and to being Christ in the lives of these children. I want to ask you to be with each and every one of us, to open our hearts and our minds and help us to understand what it is to do your service each and every day for these children. I want to ask you to be with the children that walk through our doors, not just now, but every day in the future, and that you would allow them to know your love, your kindness, your gracious protection. I want to ask you to be with the families that are not just part of our school, but part of our community as a whole, that you would protect us and guide us and keep us on your path. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. So, my mom and her sister, Suzanne Green and Nancy Davis, many years ago started Step by Step. And when we opened in 1982, we had one focus, and it remains our primary focus today. And that is that our goal is to bring children to know Christ. We are to help them to become Christian service, excuse me, to have a lifetime, to prepare them for a lifetime of Christian service throughout the world. And that was our goal in the beginning, and it remains our goal now. And so if we succeed in nothing else but leading our students to Christ, we will have succeeded in that primary goal. Now, along with that primary goal, we want to equip them for that lifetime of service in the best possible way. That means making sure that they are prepared intellectually, that they are prepared socially, that they're prepared emotionally, that they're prepared physically, that they're prepared spiritually for that lifetime of service. So in order to do that, we want to give them the best possible advantage in every single one of those areas. In particular, this training series is going to talk about how to prepare them intellectually, the academic preparation that goes into it. But there are training service series that I hope to get recorded that include physical skills, that include Bible, our worship time, that include social and emotional growth, and some of the challenges that we face there, because that is something that becomes ever more challenging the more dominant that technology gets in our life. And so as we walk through these, there are going to be many aspects of child development that interlap, that you can't help a child to learn academically without affecting how they see themselves, how they perceive themselves. Do they perceive themselves to be successful? Are they bright? Are they clever? Are they good? Or do they feel poorly about themselves? Are they stupid? Are they bad? Are they lazy? Are they, these are very important characteristics that develop because of how things go in the classroom. So none of these areas is going to be discussed in isolation. And we're going to touch on all of those as we do it. But before we get started on that, I want to go ahead and talk about some of the aspects of our program in particular that you may or may not have in your programs at your schools. And the first thing that I want to talk about is the physical setup of our classrooms. Each and every one of our classrooms at the 4-year-old level is going to have certain components. Even when we use a dual classroom approach where the children are split between 2 physical areas, they're going to have all of these aspects. Some may be in one room and some may be in another room, but they are key components to our school. And the first thing that I want to talk about is that there is going to be a circle rug or a group learning area. And this is going to be an area where we pull all of the children together at a specific time during the day for group instruction. We call it circle time. There are lots of other terms that can be used, but that's going to be our terminology that we're going to use. In that circle area, one of the most important things that we're going to have is a teacher shelf. And what this shelf looks like can vary between classroom to classroom, but it's going to be an area where we have materials that the teacher uses in group instruction time and that we train the children that they may not touch. And that's very important, that it is not for the children's use. This is for the teacher's use. Within the classroom, we're going to have shelves that we call preschool shelves or lesson shelves. And most of our classrooms are going to have at the preschool, at the 4-year-old level, we're going to have a science shelf, a practical life shelf. In the spring, the 4-year-olds will get a reading shelf, and then they will have a language shelf and a math shelf. If we're talking about 2-year-olds, their language and math shelves are combined. They have a practical life shelf, and they do not need, at that age, a science shelf or a reading shelf. Those are not going to be appropriate for their ages. That age needs more physical skills. They need more physical activities. They need more puzzles and toys and games, and fewer of those learning materials. In each of our 4-year-old classrooms, we're also going to have usually 2 toy shelves. And the big thing about a toy shelf is not that it's worthless. It's that the children can use the materials on it without having to have a specific lesson on how to use it. Usually toy shelves are some of the very first things that we teach the kids to use the very first morning, the very first day. We'll walk them over, we'll show them how to get a bucket, how to carry it to their seat, how to take it back. And once they do that, they can change out and use all of those buckets. They'll know how to use them. All of our classrooms are going to have rug racks, or in some cases, we have a rug stack. But they're going to have individual rugs that the children can use to designate a spot on the floor that is theirs, so that they can work on the floor without other people walking through their work or without messing with or getting entangled with the kids around them. It's a way of creating a boundary and a safe space for the kids within that area. We're going to have 2 kinds of tables for the children's use during learning time. And one is going to be a group table, and these usually seat 4. I don't really like them to seat more than 4 if I can help it, because there's an awful lot of people at a table with 6. That's an awful lot of other kids to try to ignore and to stay focused with. But sometimes it is necessary to seat 6 at a table. And sometimes that just happens. And when it does, then that's what we have to deal with. But the other kind of table that we're going to have in our classrooms that is very important are individual tables. And our individual tables are roughly 18 inches deep and 2 foot wide. And the child sits on one side of them, and there's only one child to the table. I know that occasionally people from outside of our system will look at an individual table and think of it as almost like a timeout spot. But that is not the purpose of an individual table. It is not meant to be a punishment. It is meant to be an opportunity for that child to work without interruption, to work without distraction, and to be free of the constant bombardment of others. Just imagine, if you will, the lunch tables in a cafeteria where there are 12 other children seated at the table with you. And you're sitting there and trying to do, I don't know, your taxes with 12 other people talking and moving and going on around you. Could you focus? No. Could you stay attuned to what you were doing and make no mistakes? No. Well, that's exactly how some children feel when put at a group table with 4. And they don't necessarily always have the ability to articulate to you, I can't handle all of these people around me. I need a little more isolation. That's not something that a 4-year-old is capable of discerning, much less expressing. So when we have the individual tables in this classroom, and you can see here on my prototypical 4-year-old classroom setup, that I actually have 6 individual, I have 6 individual tables. No, I think it's 7. 7. I have 7 individual tables on my chart here. And I have 12 spots that are at group tables. Individual tables are they're a great opportunity, and every child deserves to rotate through and to have that opportunity at some point in the year. I know that Super Sally can stay focused at her table, and she doesn't interrupt, and she always follows the rules, and she is absolutely an angel. And you can set her next to any child who can't keep their hands to themselves, and she's still going to be amazing. But you know what? Super Sally deserves that opportunity to just be by herself, and to see how much she can do and how far she can go without that interruption, just as much as Matthew, who can't stop moving, and so on and so forth. And Matthew deserves an opportunity to sit with his friends just as much as Super Sally does. So it's important that everybody get a turn sitting at each of those kinds of tables. The other kind of table that we will have in our school is something like the home center table, or occasionally an art center table, a computer table. Sometimes there's a Bible table, and those are going to be specialized for centers. And we do not use those tables during individual learning time. We do not use those tables to eat at. We don't have that be a child's designated spot. Each of these group tables and individual tables, the children will be assigned a space that they need to use during that structured learning time in the morning. Now, in the afternoon, for example, if all of these children over here go home, except for one, and these children all stay in the afternoon, you probably don't want to leave a child over here isolated on this side of the shelves in the afternoons. That wouldn't be fun. And of course, that's a much more casual time. You want to be able to have conversation. So you may very well pull this child over here to the group tables and let them have an opportunity to sit with the group, the rest of the group, in those times. But during the morning time, during that structured learning time, we want to make sure that they do use their designated spots, and that they know that that is their spot. One of the reasons I really like to have only 4 at this group table is that gives each child enough table space to use the work within the classrooms and to use it the right way. By the time that you get 6, it can get very, very crowded, and you start to get pieces that gets mixed up between one and the other. We talked about the fact that we have the lesson shelves. We talked about the fact that we have toy shelves. In addition to that, we're going to have center shelves. Yes, ma'am.
Real quick, before we get off individual tables, we should never use an individual table as a punishment, right, to a child that's misbehaving?
Occasionally, if I have a child who's misbehaving, I will move them to an individual table to give them the opportunity to get in control.
Okay.
But it's not, I never say it as a punishment.
Okay.
Let's, in fact, this is a great topic, and let's talk about this very briefly because it's a really good thing to bring up as a base ground rule, okay? Let's say that I have a child who is deliberately abusing food, okay? And they are using their spoon and taking their peas and creating a little catapult and catapulting the peas across the room. The first time I correct them and say, oh no, sir, that is not what we do. Use your spoon the right way. And then he does it again. My next step may very well be to come over and talk to him quietly, me directly to him, not loud. I'm so sorry, but that is not the way that we use our spoon, and that is not what we do with our food. You have made a big mess. I'm going to take your plate and put it up here and wait until you're ready to eat. While I do that, while you're getting ready to eat, you need to clean up these peas on the floor. So I will set their plate out of their reach with their spoon and give them the opportunity to clean up. When I return the plate, I probably don't wait more than about 3 to 5 minutes because, frankly, we don't have all day to eat lunch. Okay. When I return the child's plate, if they continue to abuse food, then at that point I'm going to take it away and tell them, I'm so sorry. Obviously, we're having difficulty using our spoon the right way. I may even say, and using our peas the right way. I mean, it may be that the child just cannot stand peas and just wants them away from them. I don't know at this point. But I'll set it aside and tell them, I will be back to help you eat when I have time to do that. But right now I need to help our other students. And then at that point, I have the child sit there and I go through helping the other children finish their meal, clean their plates, put them out, so on and so forth. Now, all of this has been done quietly. I have not done anything that is out loud, that humiliates the child, that singles them out in front of their friends. But by going and talking to that child quietly, I've also made it very clear that this is not acceptable. If I just say, stop from across the room, then not only have I not stopped the child, because it's very easy to ignore me from across the room, but I've also basically told the other children, you're free to continue to do that. And everybody should catapult their peas everywhere. And so then, at that point, I leave that child waiting. I finish helping the others clean up. And when I am done with that, then I'm going to take my chair and I'm going to sit next to the child. And I'm going to take the spoon and I'm going to scoop up the peas and offer them to him. And the fettuccine Alfredo, or whatever else it is that's on his plate, and feed him. Now, have I told him from across the room, oh, you didn't use your spoon the right way, I'm going to have to feed you like a baby, and gone over there and taken that spoon and shoved food in his mouth? That is humiliating. My quiet interactions have the exact same repercussions, but it affords the child dignity. It makes them understand that I mean business. I am not going to accept that inappropriate behavior. And it keeps a quiet, calm, and confident atmosphere within the classroom. These are very important differences. And they are the difference between treating your children with respect and being a raving lunatic. I won't say that children never get my goat. There are on occasions, times, when I get to the point that they actually do get me emotionally involved in their misbehavior. It doesn't happen often. I can think of one time in the past 3 years when I've had children who actually got me so upset that I couldn't discipline at that moment. And you know, I had to send the children, you're going to need to go out there and wait because I can't even talk to you right now. And it wasn't a pretense. It was truly, I was that emotionally upset by what they had done. But for the most part, my hard and fast rule of thumb is that if you are emotionally involved in the situation, you have no business disciplining the child at that point. If your children, if a child in your classroom has gotten you to the point that you feel emotionally like your blood pressure is up, you can tell that you are red in the face, your voice is raised in something other than a put uponness, then you do not need to be disciplining at that point. You need a timeout. It's not the child, it's you. You need to take that step back and get emotionally away from the situation and restore your ability to think and to be calm. And there's nothing wrong with getting emotionally involved in the situation. It happens to all of us at some point. We all have triggers. But when it does, we have to be the adult that says, "Whew, I cannot do this right now," and takes that step back. And again, it's going to happen to all of us at some point in time over something, and there's no telling what it is. And they can change over time. Our triggers can, but when it does, you need to be able to call the office, to end your circle time, to whatever it is, and move on and give yourself that break. Okay, so I'm glad you asked that. That was something I definitely wanted to discuss. Was how we use individual tables, because to me it is very important that discipline should never be about humiliation. It should be about helping us learn to do better, and that is crucial.
I find saying something, like the wording that you use, plays a big part in it as well. You can be meaning, like, I need you to be here because you just can't seem to get it together over there, but your wording should be more positive in force.
And I'm not sure if that was picked up by the microphone, but what she said was very important, so I'm going to repeat it. The language that you use is crucial to whether something is productive, or if it is humiliating. The language that you use is the difference between whether something is abusive or it is helpful and constructive. And that's true whether you're talking to adults or children.
Yes.
Either way, it doesn't matter. It's going to be true no matter where you are. And the perception of the language that you're using, it's going to vary by child, and it's going to vary by circumstance, and it's going to vary by what's going on in the culture at the time. There are going to be times or phrases or expressions that are perfectly acceptable today that 5 years from now will have a completely different meaning attached to them. And they may become stigmatized. There are going to be things that today are stigmatized that 5 years from now will have absolutely no significance and won't matter at all. And so being aware of that is important. And being sensitive to those nuances is important. But so is an understanding of the fact that we are all human and that we may not necessarily all keep up with whatever the current cultural differences are, and necessarily know that or understand that. The one that comes to mind at this moment is the expression "being a Karen." And that is one that has developed over the last year. This whole, that Karen did this or a Karen did that, or she's being a Karen or what have you. And I have a number of difficulties with that particular expression, and a number of reasons that I believe that it is wrong that it has entered our lexicon, but it has entered our lexicon. And so once it has, then which would not be something that I would I would use even in joking, because it does have a stigma attached to it. And it's a dismissive stigma. It is, you know, if I were to meet with a teacher who had a legitimate concern about a child and I said, oh, don't be caring about this, that is very disrespectful. And a year ago, 18 months ago, it wouldn't have, not only would I not have said it, it wouldn't have had any meaning if I did. But these are things that, you know, they evolve over time. And 5 years from now, this whole Karen thing may have moved on and they may be going, what is she talking about with this Karen business? But anyway, and I hope it has. I hope that the name has not become stigmatized forever, but I'm betting it's going to stick around. Then the next thing that I want to talk about is that within the classrooms, we have specialized shelves for different free play areas. So there is an art shelf that goes along with an art center. There's a book center shelf. I forgot to put it on here, but usually there is a block center shelf that is also on our rug area. And then there are going to be home center shelves, and one of them usually has some kind of a cooktop. And we can go with the more trendy term of dramatic play, but it's really, at our school at least, usually it's a home center. And while we may alternate what we put in it throughout the year, that's going to be the most common use for it is that home center. We're also going to have an area for the children's belongings, and that's going to be the children's cubby shelf and their classroom hooks. And that is where we want them to leave their personal belongings that they bring from home. And it's also where their individual things, such as their nap, pillows, and blankets are. At our school, we provide each child with a mat to sleep on, a pillow, a blanket, a pillowcase, and they are assigned to each child. So they're not bringing those materials back and forth each day with them. Depending on your program, that may be something that's different at your facility. So you may have a lot more space for individual children's belongings than we have to. We're very blessed in the fact that we can keep that fairly compact. We do have, as I said, rug racks, and those are going to contain those individual rugs that get rolled and then stood up. And in a typical 4-year-old classroom, we're going to have 8 rugs that can be used at a time. If we're very, very blessed and we have lots of extra space, we may have 12. But most of the time we have 8. The other thing is that our children at Step by Step sleep in their classroom. So our rooms have to be arranged with that in mind. So when we arrange our classrooms, we're going to make sure that we have space for, if I can get this, to go. All right, there we go. We're going to make sure that we have space for their individual nap mats. So because this is a 4-year-old classroom, at this point, 18 is our normal enrollment for that. So there are 18 mats that are shown here in blue in my little hypothetical classroom with where I would set the children. And each of them has space between them so that a child could get up, say, for example, from this mat and walk carefully over here to go and to use the restroom. And there is sometimes a very small ability to walk by, but there is some place that they could walk by to go and use the restroom. Of course, our goal would be that they all go to the bathroom before they lay on their mat and then not have to go to the bathroom again until nap time is over. But we're dealing with actual children, not hypothetical angels, and so then they will have to use the restroom in the middle of nap time. That's just part of it. And so this is a priority that we keep these kinds of areas available for our nap mats within the classroom. Sometimes we combine kids at nap time, so you don't have to make space for 18 kids in your room. You have to make space for 36 children to nap in your classroom. And that can be quite a challenge. Unfortunately, Miss Green, Miss Ford, Miss Falconer are well acquainted with our rooms and can know how to help make that work when that's necessary. So given what our classrooms typically look like and how we typically use them, the next thing that I want to talk about is what our schedules typically look like in a 4-year-old classroom. Our center normally opens at 5:45 in the morning. And I say normally because we've been going through COVID for the past year, and with that we've had reduced hours. But typically we open at 5:45 in the morning and we close at 6:45 at night. And for that first hour, sometimes 2 hours of the morning, we have a gathering room where children from all different groups get dropped off together until we get to a count where then we have to split them out. And from that one, we're going to split out groups at different points as we start to meet the maximum that we can have. And you can see here, this is an Eagles classroom schedule, and this was for the 2019-2020 school year. So this would be the fall before last, the last regular one that we had. And so from 5:45 to 7:45, the children arrive into the gathering room and we serve breakfast. At 7:45, then they go to the playground, and they have a very short playground time from 7:45 to 8 o'clock, and this is with the Busy Bees and the Dolphins. The big advantage to that early morning arrival playground time is that that is our biggest window of drop-offs between 7:45 and 8. And by being on the playground, it prevents the tears. The kids are so excited to get there and to play on the playground that you don't deal with the same separation anxieties that you do when they drop off directly into the classroom. If that separation anxiety at drop-off time is a problem in your rooms, the biggest advice I can give you is change your schedule and do something where the children are eager to come, because it makes all the difference in the world. Mom cannot compete against the new tricycle with the trailer or the swing set. There's no reason on earth to stand here and cry when there's brand new sand toys. They want to go and use those things. And it makes a big difference in that drop-off time. So then at 8 o'clock, the children come back in, they go to the restroom, they clean up, and they look at books as they're getting ready to start their day. And our circle or group learning time starts at 8:15. And this time for our circle and group learning time is pretty much universal in all of our classrooms. Whether it's 2-year-olds or 4-year-olds, we want to start the day with their group learning time. It is when they are freshest, it's when their attention span is the best, and it is when we are going to be most successful with introducing those lessons and setting the tone for the way that the day goes. And so for this older group here, you can see we have 45 minutes on the schedule. Are they going to be able, day one, brand new 4-year-olds, to sit for 45 minutes and listen to you lecture? No, absolutely not. And we'll talk about how to handle that as we get into circle time more. But there is 45 minutes there that's allotted for your circle. It doesn't mean you have to take up every minute of it every single day. But by the time that we're getting to the end of the 4-year-old school year, our goal is to be training the children so that they can sit through a 45-minute circle in control and focused and working. Now, does that mean that we're all going to be perfect little soldiers with our hands in our lap? Absolutely not. They are 4-year-olds. So we're going to need to make sure that our circle is engaging, that it's fun, that there's a lot of play, that there's a lot of physical movement for the children, because that is crucial for them. But our goal is, as I said, to stretch till we can get that 45 minutes of attention out of them. The next thing that we have on this schedule is paperwork. And paperwork is not the art projects that go along with your special activity. Paperwork is a key part of our curriculum. It's something that gets passed out to you from the office, and it works on specific skills. Paperwork has many benefits, one of which is learning to follow oral instructions, learning to practice self-restraint. It helps develop hand-eye coordination. It helps to develop self-control. There are all kinds of, what also is huge in developing, of course, language and fine motor skills and so on and so forth. There are lots of benefits to paperwork, but I want to make sure that there's a distinction between the paperwork that is part of our curriculum and the arts and crafts and supplemental activities that you may have as part of their science or social studies or even seasonal activities. Those are two very different things, and you cannot replace the paperwork that's part of our curriculum with those supplemental activities. It's not the same at all. It's like saying, I'm going to replace vegetables in your diet with candy. Doesn't help. Not going to have the same output or the same benefits. After that, they go to the restroom, they clean up, they get ready for snack, they have snack, and then they go out back to the playground. When they return back inside, we have individual work time. And individual work time in our preschool classrooms are going to be times when they're using those specific lesson shelves. The math shelf, the language shelf, the science shelf, the reading shelf, and the practical life shelf. They're going to be working and practicing the skills that you have taught in your group lesson time. This is not going to be time for playing in the home center or the block center or the art center. This is going to be work time. And we call it work because, of course, it is important. Does that mean it can't be fun? Oh, absolutely not. Work for these children needs to be fun. If it's not entertaining, then you have lost them and it's no good. Then after that, you can see we have a 20-minute special activity time. And that is going to be the time when you're going to do whatever the special activity is for the day. Special activities at our school include art, music, chapel, cooking, going to the library. What have I forgotten? Gardening. Yes, that's one of them. And those are going to rotate by day. And most of the time, if it's a special activity that you do in your classroom, we're going to ask you to rotate days that you do them on so that if we have children who attend part-time, that they get an opportunity to do every special activity. So, for example, if you have kids who attend Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and you always cook on Tuesday, they'll never get to cook, and that's so sad. Cooking is amazing. It's so incredible for them. Not only is it science to watch those things happen, but it's fine motor skills, it's helping with their math development, it's helping with their language, and of course it's a practical life skill on top of all of that. And you can get kids to eat things they would never have touched otherwise, because if they make it, they want to try it. And so, you know, cooking is enormously beneficial. It's a crucial part of our development and our curriculum. And yet, if a child never gets to do it, they've missed out on all of those opportunities. So we want to make sure that we rotate those special activities. Then after that, you can see that we have our second circle. And the second circle here includes Bible, their DISTAR instruction. And DISTAR instruction is going to be a specific curriculum that we use to teach reading. And it starts with symbol action games and goes all the way through with rhyming and blending and so on and so forth. It's a very specific curriculum, and it's unique to 4-year-olds and kindergarten. We don't use it. Maybe the oldest 3s might use it in the spring, but it's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing. If you ever, like, occasionally you'll see newspaper articles, or I guess they would be social media articles or what have you, where they'll talk about the fact that at a certain elementary school that they've achieved 100% literacy. Every child in the school can read. And most of the time when you go through and you read the details of it, they are using DISTAR or a current version of that in order to teach reading. It was originally created with disadvantaged students in mind, but what they found was that it is so successful that it gives every student an advantage in learning to read. And then also during this time we have social studies and your science. Most of the time, you're not going to be able to do Bible and DISTAR and social studies and science in what ends up being a 40-minute time period. That's a very short time period to do all of those things. So what you're going to have to do is usually, I would say probably you're going to spend about 7 minutes on DISTAR, maybe a little bit longer if you're teaching a new concept, but most of the time DISTAR, it's meant to go quickly. It's not meant to be hanging around and playing with it. It's meant to be a fast pace. And then after that, you got your Bible story. And depending on whether you're teaching a new story or you are reviewing a story that you've taught before, you may very well spend 5 minutes, 7 minutes on Bible as a whole. And now we're at about 15 minutes of your thing. And then your social studies or your science is going to take up the rest of that time. That leaves about 25 minutes for social studies and science. You will probably do one or the other. Science topics are going to include everything from health to sinking and floating to magnets to animals, and you can go into everything from, why birds have feathers to what kind of tracks they might make in the mud. We're going to have a wide opportunity in the science area. Social studies can include everything from holidays to good manners to how to be a friend or
Going to the doctor?
Going to the doctor, that's a good one. What?
Community helpers.
Community helpers. Oh yes, that's a big one. Yeah, there are lots of those topics. And we have specific science and social studies areas that we expect you to cover during the year, and they are included in our preschool goals. So most of the time, if you look, is that, yeah. Okay. These are our preschool goals that we have, and most of the time I suggest that you get a copy of the preschool goals and put them at the front of your lesson plan for the year. And then as you teach the topics, you just mark them out or highlight them so that you know that you've done them all every year. Because otherwise it's very easy to forget and not cover sink and float or observing the weather. That would be one that I would completely forget to cover because weather is just not interesting to me. Anytime anybody asks me what the weather's gonna be, I'm gonna say, I don't know, I don't watch the weather, I'm not 80. That was my dad's job, was to tell me things like, oh, there's a hurricane coming. And if there's not something big and significant to do with the weather, I just don't care. And so this is not something I would think to include, but it is important for the children to talk about, especially because most of them don't have memories that go back further than the last season. And unless there is something dramatic, like a week of snow, they're not going to remember by the end of August what it's like to be cold. And in fact, I have kids who at the end of summer don't remember what the moon looks like because they have not been up late enough to see the moon in the sky because it's, the sun sets so late around here. And so these are big significant topics that we do need to be sure and cover with them. And in those, then outside of the ones that are included in here, then you have the opportunity for the fun part. And that is going to be your opportunity as teachers to use those teachable moments and to seek that inspiration and to bring some of that art form of teaching into the classrooms. And this is where things like Pinterest, or if you want to go old school, the Macmillan files that we have in the library, they can be of great help for those. And you might cover things like how to grow plants and gardening and plant seeds and grow tomato plants. Which group was it that did that? The tomato plants.
The kittens did that this year.
The kittens did that. I saw them walking through and she had tomato plants the other day. And so, with that, then there are going to be lots of those things that may appeal to you as a teacher or as a particular hobby or interest of yours. There is nothing that gets children more excited about science than a teacher who loves science. There's nothing that gets children more excited about history than a teacher who loves history. And if you want to see children on fire for God, give them a teacher who loves God and who loves teaching about God. It makes all the difference. So your passions become the primary impetus for a lot of how that is going to be spent. In addition, then, after we finish that 40 minutes of that second circle, then these kids go into lunch. Then they're going to go into cleanup, nap time, etc. And you'll see here that we've allotted 2 full hours for nap time. I will tell you that in the 4-year-old year, you're going to have kids who don't need 2 hours worth of nap. In fact, by the end of the 4-year-old year, if you're teaching the oldest 4s, they may all be awake within an hour. And that's fine, in which case then we're going to have to accommodate that. And we can talk about that more when we get into safe sleep and so on and so forth. But then the rest of their afternoon is going to be much less structured. You can see that they have snack, they have art or a special activity right after snack, then they have free play, and this is where they get to use all of those centers that they love. And then from there, then they're going to do story time and music or puzzles or Play-Doh, that kind of a group time. Why do we need that group activity? Why can't they just have free play all afternoon? Does anybody know?
It's boring.
Arguments.
They have too much time. And too much time is the number one problem and source of problems within the classroom. These kids at 4 can only take, usually, about 3 to 4 minutes of free time per year of age. So by the time that they are in the 4-year-old classroom, about 15, maybe 20 minutes of free time is all they can handle. And after that, they're going to start arguing, they're going to start getting hurt, they're going to start playing too rough, they're going to start misusing materials. It doesn't take a lot to break it up. You can call everybody together, for example, on the playground. After about 15 minutes of free time, call everybody together and run a quick lap. And then tell them, okay, get a drink of water and then go play. And you know what? It's like it resets that time all over again. It eliminates those problems before they start. But if you give these kids 45 minutes on the playground, everybody's going to be hurt, everybody's going to be crying, and everybody's going to be miserable. It just does not work. They cannot handle that much free time. And so in the afternoons, even though it's a less structured time, we have to keep that in mind, that we can't go too long without something to do that breaks it up. And so this story time here that you call them together for, it's slated to last 30 minutes. Does it have to last 30 minutes? No. Do they have to clean up for it? No. Sometimes if things seem to be going really well and they're very, very much playing well, they may have out activities that they're really enjoying. For example, the block center, those kids may have been making, I don't know, whatever it is. They're making an elaborate house with steps and 2 stories and whatever, and it's, time to have your group activity. You may tell them, leave it right there. You can go back after we read the story. Call them all over, have them read the story, and then allow them to go back to the block center. That's fine. In particular, when you get into the older groups where they have this kind of negotiated play, that really can make a difference. If they're playing cooperatively with each other, to allow them to go back to finish their play is important. All right. Then at 4:45, they have clean up, pack up. They go back outside, and you notice that they've gotten all of their belongings ready to go home at that point, because by 5 o'clock, most of our parents are starting to arrive. And by 5:45, when they come back inside here, then they won't have that much, there won't be that many children left. They'll be mostly gone. And from 6 to 6:45, they have that final tail end in the gathering room again. And again, this is a typical schedule during normal times. Obviously, you may have a class where everybody leaves at 3:30. Or, you may have a class where nobody gets there before 9 o'clock. If nobody is arriving in your classroom before 9 a.m., don't start your circle at 8:15. Don't miss all of the children. If you have a bunch of children whose parents don't report to work until 10, then you're going to need to adjust your schedule or come to Miss Ford or Miss Falconer or myself and have your schedule adjusted so that your circle time is happening at the time when all of your children are present. Because you can't teach them if they're not there. And, it's pretty much a hard and fast rule of thumb. Are there any questions over schedules, or is there anything I forgot to cover there?
The teaching bucket, is that a part of the circle time?
Yes, teaching bucket is going to be part of that group learning time. And whether you do your teaching bucket in the second circle or in the first circle is just going to depend on your particular teaching style. It may be that you want to move one of these activities, Distar or Bible, up to your first circle and put your teaching bucket in the second circle, or you may want to do your teaching bucket in that first group learning time. But having 2 separate group learning times divided by other activities is a key part of how we teach at this age. Even in our kindergarten year, we're going to have a first thing circle, and then we're going to have another group learning time later on in the morning, because we can enormously multiply the amount of group learning time that we have to introduce concepts, to review, to practice, if we break that up by time. Now, if we're talking about age other than 4-year-olds, for example, if we have 2-year-olds, we may end up with 3 group learning times within a 2-year-old morning, because they can only handle this much. And if we're going to work with that short attention span, that short focus, then we may end up with multiple short times interrupted by other activities. And of course, there are things that we can do within the group learning time to help extend it and to help stretch their attention spans and keep them focused on what we're doing. Okay, so we're going to move on, and we're going to start talking about what we teach in that group lesson time. And we're going to start with the way that group lessons should start within our classrooms. And so the first thing that we do in group lesson time is that we have the children come over. Oh, and you know what? I really should have included this in the first part of the lesson, but I'll say it now. At Step by Step, one of the fundamental things is that we teach the children that there is a right way to do everything. There's a right way to carry a chair. There's a right way to sit in a chair. There's a right way to answer. There's a right way to wash your hands. There's a right way to go to the bathroom. There's a right way to every aspect of their life. We teach them that there is a right way, and we teach those aspects over and over and over again. And basically what we're teaching here is good citizenship, how to be considerate of others, how to use resources wisely, how to take care of our school, how to take care of our resources, how to show respect to our facility, to our friends, to ourselves, to our school, to God, so on and so forth. And this language, the right way, is crucial to the way that we teach all the way through. And so when we are showing, for example, a lesson on how to wash your hands, we're going to talk about, do our hands go up here or do they go down in the bowl of the sink? No, they're going to go down in the bowl of the sink. That's the right way. If we put our hands up here and we wash, what happens? Water goes everywhere and we make a big mess. Is that big mess? Is that the right way? No, that's not the right way. The right way is down here so that water doesn't splash everywhere. When we use soap, are we going to pump until we have big handfuls of soap? No, that's not the right way. All it takes is one pump. How many pumps? One pump. How many pumps do we need to wash our hands? One pump. If we pump, is it going to take a long time to wash all that soap away? Yes. And will there be enough soap for our friends? No. That wouldn't be the right way, would it? By talking that way, by using that language that this is the right way, when we have a child who does something other than the right way, we don't have to say, don't use that much soap. Don't hold your hands up that high. Don't make a big mess. Don't play in the water. Don't. We don't have to say all those things. All we have to do is look at them and say, is that the right way? And if it's not the right way, then we ask them, please show me that you know how to do it the right way. And if they have no clue what you're talking about, then maybe they do need another lesson on the right way. But establishing and maintaining the right way to do things is a key part of how our classrooms function and how we expect the children to behave within the group. Now, of course, this is very similar to what we experience in adulthood. So, for example, driving is one of those areas of life where our safety, our very lives depend upon people doing things the right way. And preparation for being in charge of that 2,000 pounds of metal and steel going 70 miles an hour down the highway without costing innocent people their lives is learning to conform to the right way in the small things in childhood. We build those steps up gradually so that in adulthood we can have the big responsibilities and we can respect the right way to put a child into a car seat or the right way to use different materials or to function in different aspects of our lives. And so teaching this to children when they're young prepares them for that kind of responsibility when they are older. And so as we talk about how to teach things here at Step by Step, that whole right way concept, it's not unique to something that we teach the children. It's something that we teach the teachers too. One of the most important aspects of our school is that as a school, as a whole, from birth all the way through 8th grade, we have standards that set the children up for success from one class to the next and to the next. As our children move from one class to another, whether it be from a 3-year-old preschool year to a 4-year-old preschool year, or from a 6th grade to a 7th grade, we have systems that are in place, thank you very much, and that are identical as far as the functioning goes for our kids over and over and over again. This saves enormous amounts of time, and it also saves the children from having to learn how to function in a new classroom every time they move. If they know, for example, that the rules are that the blocks stay in the block center, or that we use work on an individual rug, and they learn that in the toddler year, when they move to the 2-year-old year, the rule is the same. When they move to the 3-year-old year, the rule is the same. By the time they get to a 4-year-old year, if you have 14 children who've been at Step by Step their entire lives, or have been at Step by Step previously, you've got 14 kids who are already prepared to keep their work on their rug. We don't have to spend time trying to control the chaos for those 14 kids. Now, we may still have 4 that are new from outside that have no idea what we're talking about, but it's a lot easier to teach 4 to have that self-control to stay on their rug than it is to teach all of them. And it's a lot easier for the children when they know that those ground rules, those basic functions, are the same from year after year after year. So, for example, this is going to be one that most of you probably actually remember in your life. In our elementary and junior high classrooms, we provide and sharpen pencils. There is a basket of pencils when you walk in the classroom by the door. There's one basket for sharpened pencils. There's another basket for unsharpened pencils. They are there. The children are expected to get 2 or 3 sharpened pencils before they sit in their seat. And at the end of the day, or whenever their pencils go dull, they're expected to turn them back in so the teacher can sharpen them. We also have a basket with paper. Now, this is very different from a lot of public school environments where you are expected to walk in the door with your own writing materials and your own, writing utensil. And I can remember myself being in high school and not being able to complete an assignment because I didn't bring a pen to class and nobody was going to lend me one. There was nobody else to get one from. And the teacher was very upset with me that I had to borrow hers. Or I was too shy or nervous to ask the teacher to borrow one. And so I just sat there. It's a very different setup. And has a very different mentality or foundational belief behind it. But one of our big foundational beliefs is that we don't have time to waste. And so, they're children. They're not necessarily going to be expected to remember. Now, if they want to bring their own special pencil or they want to maintain their own supply of paper, that's perfectly fine. But we're going to have those materials in the back of the room for them so that we're not wasting time with them trying to negotiate between themselves. Hey, can I borrow a piece of paper? Oh, here, let me tear one out of this notebook. Hey, do you have any paper? Hey, do you have any paper? Can I borrow some paper? Okay, these are the kinds of negotiations and all that. I mean, you're going to have Super Sally, who's there every day with her Trapper Keeper or whatever, with all of the paper and the pens and all the layouts, and she's going to need every one of those because she's got a color coding system. She's going to be perfect, okay? But Slow Joe should not have his preoccupation with the fact that he doesn't have a pencil, and he knows he's supposed to do that in pencil, to keep him from learning. And that's what happens. And so we're going to eliminate that as a problem by supplying those materials and having them available. And we are blessed enough that we can just tell the parents, You're going to pay a supply fee. We're going to keep the supplies. We'll pass the supplies out. We'll make sure that they take the supplies home when they need them for homework, and so on and so forth. And it's that same kind of idea in our preschool classrooms. We want to make sure that certain things, the functions, work the same from classroom to classroom. And so you may have come from another school, and there may be another way that you do things. And I'm not saying that that's not a good way. And I'm not saying that that it doesn't work or that it's not even sometimes better. But what I am saying is that our children are used to a specific system, and that by creating and maintaining that sameness from year to year, from class to class, from group to group, that consistency allows the children to thrive in a way that doesn't happen when there's a lack of it. And so sometimes that means that I'm going to ask you to set aside some other things and to do it my way. Sometimes that means that you're going to come up with an innovation, and I'm going to say, that's great. We're going to implement it system-wide. So, for example, an example of that kind of innovation is that years ago, we used to, because we've always had mats and pillows and blankets for our classes, we didn't want to have to depend on parents to bring them back and forth and for them to wash them, because sometimes they don't get washed and then they stink. And, so on and so forth. We've always assigned them to our students. But we used to take the mat and we would write the child's name at the top of it at the beginning of the school year. And then the next year, when the next group moved into that room, we would mark out the previous child's name and write the new children's names on the mats. And we would end up with a list at the top of the mat of 6 or 7 or 8, sometimes. If we had a lot of turnover within a classroom in a year, sometimes we had 15 different names that had been marked out with the new one. And about 15 years after we opened, 15 years of marking names on mats and marking them out and rewriting them, and marking names on pillowcases and marking them out and rewriting them, and marking names on blankets and marking them out and rewriting them, and marking names on pillows and marking them out and rewriting them. After 15 years of this, then Danis, Miss Woolley, who retired as director a few years back, she said, what if we just numbered them in the class and then we assigned each child a number? Well, that was revolutionary. It was brilliant. I mean, it was so much smarter, and we didn't have to mark them out. You just change your list of who was number 1 and who was number 2. Okay, that was a absolute brilliant idea, and it was a change that we implemented system-wide, because it was so much better than what it was. But when we changed it, we needed to change it in every room, in every group, and with every teacher. And then once we changed it and we started writing numbers on everything, we needed the teachers to go along with the change and not go back and write all the kids' names on the mats after that. Because, now we had these pretty mats without all these markouts on them. We certainly didn't want to have to buy all new mats, again, before they wore out. And mats are expensive. Currently, we found some on sale for $30 each, and I was excited by that. I bought orange mats, which I do not care for the color orange. But was my least favorite color. But I got orange ones because they were only $30 each, and that was an exciting price. So, this is not something that you're going to replace 18 of willy-nilly at the drop of a hat. These are big investments. So occasionally, as I said, those changes come through. And even though it may be different than the way we've always done it, or the way that you've done it elsewhere, again, we have to be open to change. And I'm going to be the first one to tell you that I understand that change is scary, and that most of the time we don't greet change with enthusiasm, and that we're drawn to teaching because we like to be in charge, and we like things to be done our way. That's how we became teachers, is that we wanted to be the one in the classroom that was in charge of everybody else. This is not an area where it's easy for us to be led or to accept that kind of idea. But when you are part of our system for the good of the whole, for the good of the children, and for the good of our purpose, I ask you to accept that priority, that we want to make things consistent from child to child, group to group, year to year. All right, so from there, now we're going to go back to what I started on 20 minutes ago. And that is that we're going to talk about group lessons and what we teach in our group lesson time. And one of the things that we start our group lesson time with, from classroom to classroom, age to age, year to year, is that the first thing that we do is that we teach the children about the Pledge of Allegiance. Now, in the toddler years, in the 2-year-old years, we may very well start with the Pledge of Allegiance, but we may just start with learning to salute the flag. That we're going to put our hand in our heart and we're going to look at the flag, and we might learn to say, I pledge, if we're verbal. But sometimes we're not verbal and we're ready to learn to salute the flag. And I probably shouldn't be tapping the microphone. That's probably not good for the sound. But we're going to learn to treat the flag with respect. And so when the flag comes out, we're going to put our hand on our heart. Okay, so I'm trying to stay on topic and not to tell stories, but I can't help myself. Stories are they're just part of how I teach, and to me, they help us to learn. I don't know how many of you have ever seen children salute the flag, pictures of it prior to World War II. But prior to World War II, we saluted the flag like this.
Really? Oh.
And so you will see pictures of children saluting the flag and saying the Pledge of Allegiance with their hands out like so. And we adopted this as our salute to the flag, of course, in response to Heil Hitler. And it's one of those things where an entire nation changed because of the circumstances that were going on in the world at the time. And so I cannot put my hand on my heart without thinking about the fact that was a huge change, and it was done in response to the circumstances that went on. And of course, right now within our country, we have been through a time of great unrest, and there are going to be changes that happen within our lifetime that will boggle the mind of our children and our grandchildren. And they're going to look back and be shocked and amazed that you can remember things another way. Whether that be the fact that, hospitals used to be open for visitors willy-nilly and they could just walk in the door, whether or not they had on a mask or had a fever or could be sick, or if it becomes the fact that some of the changes that are going on racially, with social injustice and all throughout our country, those changes may very well be era marking, so to speak. And so, I think it's important for us to remember that right now we are creating history and we're living it. And to us, it's a day to day, but the world is never going to be the same tomorrow as it was yesterday. And that's true all the time. So, we have to roll with those punches. So there may be things that change, within our curriculum, within our system, within our norms. And you may be watching this at a point when nobody is doing this anymore because this has become tainted. And that's going to be okay. We're going to accept the new and move on. So yes, from an early age, we want to teach the children to show respect for the flag. And currently, the way that we show respect for the flag is by putting our hand on our heart. And so from 18 months, that would be how we would start. And we would point to the flag and we would talk to them about, here's our flag and we're going to show them respect. Can you put your hand on your heart to show respect? What do we do when we see the flag? We put our hand on our heart. What do we do when we see the flag? We put our hand on our heart. Can you show me? Can you put your hand on your heart? And you're going to help the toddler, 18-month-old start that. Now, of course, by 4-year-old year, then we're getting to the point that we're going to be teaching a lot more about respect for the flag. So one of my designated helpers is always the flag holder. And with the flag holder, I'm going to talk to them about the fact of how we show respect to the flag itself, whether or not we can allow it to dip and touch the floor, whether or not we're going to hold it upside down or right side up. Are we
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. So back to flag holders and showing respect. When we teach them to hold the flag, we want to make sure that we're teaching them not just not to let it touch the ground, but also that we're not going to take it and wave it around, and that this is something that we're doing that is serious and important. And I use those words, and I know they don't know what they mean right now, but they're going to learn how to show reverence by our demeanor. And they're going to learn what those words mean by seeing how we act during it. And so I teach them that they have to hold it with two hands. They have to hold it at their belly button. And that the flag holder, his job is to hold the flag with both hands. He doesn't have to hold his hand on his heart. And that is because oftentimes 4-year-olds do not have the coordination to hold this with one hand and to put their hand on their heart and to pay attention. They're both going to end up braining somebody, usually you, poking you someplace that's not comfortable. So we have the two hands as they hold the flag. And they're going to hold the flag through the Pledge of Allegiance, however far it is that we go, and then they're going to hold it through our national anthem. And when I introduce the flag and I talk about it, I'm going to go ahead and introduce them to the concept of what the flag stands for. I'm going to talk about the fact that we have red stripes that show courage and our white stripes that stand for purity. I'm going to talk about our blue field here that stands for, oh, my brain just went on hiatus. Red is courage. Okay, for all of a sudden, all I can think of is the French flag. Liberté, it's égalité, fraternité. I cannot think of the American flag. Anyway, I will talk to them about the meaning of the different parts of the flag. I'll talk about the fact that we have 13 stripes, because when we started our country, we only had 13 states. But now we have 50 states, and so we have 50 stars on our flag. I guess we could have 51 pretty soon if the DC thing goes through, right? And I'm going to talk about what makes this our flag for our country. And then in other countries, they have other flags. They know what I mean by our country in other countries. Most of our kids won't. Occasionally, we'll have children who might have visited another country or who have a mom from somewhere else, in which case that may mean something to them. But it gives me an opportunity not only to make them understand and to recognize what makes our flags ours, but it also lets me introduce all kinds of amazing vocabulary. One of the most important things that we do as teachers is talk. Talk, 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 talk. Talk, 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 talk. Now, when I talk to them, I may talk about the fact that I have a flag pole. Now, I know this is a stick, but I'm going to call it my flag pole. And I don't have anything like a halyard on this, but I may talk about the fact that I've got the point, and that goes up, and that we have to be careful with it so that we don't, poke anybody else with it, but that shows how important our flag is. It's one of the things that we do that shows how important it is. And I'll talk to them about how to hold it. Now, the very first day, all I'm going to teach of the Pledge of Allegiance is how to hold the flag, how to put our hand on our heart, and then I'm, with 4-year-olds, probably going to teach them to say the words, I pledge. That when we say the Pledge of Allegiance, it starts out with the two most important words, I pledge. What does I pledge mean? I pledge means I promise. It means that you are promising to show respect to our flag. You're promising to show respect to our country. And we're going to start there and move on. Now, over time, did you find out? Okay, what is it?
Vigilance, perseverance, and justice.
Thank you. Liberté, égalité, and fraternité. Liberty, perseverance.
Vigilance.
Vigilance,
perseverance, and justice.
Perseverance, and justice.
That's what blue stands for.
Blue stands for all three of
All
those
three?
things.
Yeah. White is purity.
And innocence,
Red is courage.
Yeah.
valor.
You knew this whole time?
I know, right? I was thinking that in my head.
I just looked it up.
Can I just tell you that my ability to recall random facts was a lot more impressive before Google.
Certain stuff I hear, I say, oh no, let me get this on the phone. Way above my skills right here.
Okay, so as we teach the Pledge of Allegiance, we're going to go through this and we're going to teach it very slowly. I cannot emphasize enough how slowly we need to go as we teach the Pledge of Allegiance or any of this material. What happens oftentimes is that we think children have something and understand and know it, and they don't. Prime example of that, I'm going to go ahead and use this one right now, is my nephew Cody. He moved to the dolphin class partway through the year. And so he was in the butterflies, and then he moved to the dolphins. And with that move, of course, then there was a break in his learning because the dolphins were learning at an accelerated pace. They're an older class. They're a more advanced class than where he was in the butterflies. So there was a disconnect between what he had learned with the butterflies and what he walked into in the dolphins. And because of this disconnect, they were much further on not only the Pledge of Allegiance, but also they were learning the Lord's Prayer. And he walked in partway through that. Now, when he says the Lord's Prayer to you, he knows certain parts of it, and he has solid learning on it. It is secure knowledge. He knows those words and those phrases. His articulation may not be the best because he does still have a few speech issues, but he knows those solidly. But there are other parts where it was too much, too fast, too quick, and he's fuzzy on them.
It's the whole beginning that he missed.
Uh-huh.
It's the end that.
The end is completely solid. But the beginning, he is just as likely to start with, Our Father, I pledge allegiance, who art in heaven, to the flag of the United States. He's going to throw the pledge in there with it because it's all mixed up. It's just a big jumble in his head. And this is what happens when we move too fast. And for Cody, it was a matter of the promotion within the classrooms, and it can't be helped. I mean, and he'll get it next year. I mean, he will not grow up saying the Pledge of Allegiance in the middle of the Lord's Prayer. Yeah, he'll get those and separate them out. But at the same time, if you have an entire class that is missing parts of things, it means that you've moved too soon, too fast. Yes.
So my kids, my butterflies, we ended the year with the national anthem and the Rockets' Red Glare. So that brings me to a question of what is too slow? Because they didn't know, by last week when we ended school, they didn't know the entire national anthem.
That's okay.
Okay.
And that's fine.
Okay.
They're in their 3-year-old year. If they really know the words and they can really say that much of it, I am very pleased. That's excellent. If I have, I know adults who don't know the national anthem. I go to a baseball game, when they stand up, you're going to have a lot of adults that are humming along, especially in the middle.
Wow.
And it happens. So, I would much rather have them know that half of it and have it solid and have that foundation to build on in their 4-year-old year, because they will work on it their 4-year-old year, than to have the middle of it be murky, because it's much harder to go back and clear that up.
Okay.
And so that's fine,
I didn't learn it until I started working here.
Oh,
Really?
that doesn't, I would love to be surprised, and yet at the same time,
Yeah.
I'm not.
That's not fair.
Yeah, this little too.
Yeah, Miss Little too, but Miss,
From another country.
yes, yes, yeah. Yeah.
I thought I only learned it because I wanted to
And
see it.
inspire you to. I know little bits of the song, the original song that go to it, but not all of it. With his fiddle and flute, there was a drinking song that the tune came from.
Was it a poem originally?
The national anthem was originally a poem, and it was set to music of an existing song. It's a piggyback song. And so I know little bits of the original song, but not all of it. But yeah, it's one of those things that every now and then when I hear it, I'll start singing, But here's another one. And I think I've got the right age in here to know this one, all right? If I hum it, Barney is a dinosaur from our imagination. When he's tall, he's what you'd call a dinosaur sensation.
I was a big on Barney as a child.
It's the same tune. And at one point, Barney was so popular that the tune was much more recognized as the Barney tune than it was as Yankee Doodle. I mean, there was at one point when that was.
I did not know that was a Barney song.
It's the Barney theme song.
Oh, yeah.
The Barney song.
It's the Barney song. Barney is a
I
dinosaur.
didn't get put on Barney until Wesley.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I say. I don't
You gotta love Barney. I think this is my prediction, okay? I think Barney's gonna have a huge resurgence in the next decade or so, because the kids who grew up like Jade watching Barney all the time are gonna start having children, and I think that it's gonna be like, no, that's not irritating. That's like nostalgia. I loved Barney as a kid. We're gonna put it back on, and this is my prediction.
Oh, Maddie
Stalking
definitely
Barney.
watched Barney as a baby when she was like 1 or 2, because I loved Barney. So you're gonna watch it just like Mama did.
Exactly. With streaming services and the fact that you can, I definitely think Barney's going to come back. And I'm okay with that because Barney he's not ugly or rude or,
Yeah.
I would much rather have that be popular than like the Wizards of Waverly Place or. Okay, so speaking of out-of-date kids' television shows, let's go ahead and move back to the Pledge of Allegiance. When we teach the pledge, the most important thing is, as I said, is that we're going to go slowly. And by that, I mean that we will start with teaching the stand. Oh, and I do teach those words. That I have my flag helper come up and hold my flag. And then I teach the children, the flag holder says stand, salute, pledge. And then we say, I pledge allegiance to the flag. And I teach them that this is a salute. That's what I call this. Again, I'm tapping the microphone. Sorry about that.
I have 3 different audio sources going.
Good. That's very good.
stand, salute.
Pledge. And then we're going to teach them the Pledge of Allegiance, one word or short phrase at a time. So I'll introduce I pledge. And then next, I'm going to add that word allegiance. And I'm not going to add anything else for a long time. I pledge allegiance. And I'm going to say it just like that when we're learning it. I pledge allegiance. And I'm going to articulate that word very clearly and very carefully. And I'm going to ask them to say it back to me. I'm going to test them on that word and have them say that word to me over and over again, because it's a hard word with a lot of syllables. And it's something that they hear in their daily lives. And so it's going to be very important that we really do stop on that word. And I may introduce the word allegiance and not go any further in the Pledge of Allegiance for a full week or 2. That may be all I say is I pledge allegiance. And then we move on. We start with our Star Spangled Banner, our special song for the flag. And that may be all I say of that pledge for a good long while, depending on whether I have children who are all new to the school, whether they've already done the pledge in their other classrooms, so on and so forth. And the next thing I want to mention is that I know that there are some very good musical settings for the pledge. I know that we have some on the computers that are in the classrooms that have the music variety. And I know that we use some of them in, like, for example, the graduation ceremony, I think is one of the places where we sing it. Sometimes we'll sing it at open house, etc. We don't introduce the musical setting until after we have learned the words without the music. Otherwise, you end up with children who can only sing it. And they are dependent upon the music for that. So we want to make sure that we save that until after we've gotten through the language and have learned it as a group. After we've gotten to allegiance, then I'm going to introduce to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag. Am I worried about teaching the rhythm of how we say it at this point? No. They'll pick up the rhythm very easily. Like if you are saying the pledge with a group of people, there's a natural rhythm that we say it to as a whole, and it's nationwide. You can go to a ball game or a gathering in any part of the country, and we're not going to say the Pledge of Allegiance with a radically different set of emphasis or pauses. It's going to be pretty much nationwide, and we will teach that to them, how to say that as a group eventually. They'll get that down, but first we're going to teach them those individual words and to articulate those sounds. This is hard for kids because the Pledge of Allegiance is one very long sentence with lots of prepositional phrases. In general, 4-year-olds are not big on state of being verbs, is, am, are, so on and so forth, and they do not articulate prepositions well. Those are the kinds of subtleties within our language usage that get lost on them. And they don't necessarily understand the difference between, behind, those positional words. That's hard for them. Instead of and with, that's a very, very, very big difference in meaning, but they're subtle to them. They don't necessarily get that. And so when we're teaching this, they're not going to necessarily get to the flag. They're not going to hear that too, but it's an important word, of the United States. And they're not going to hear, you cannot teach United States all as one word because it's going to end up slurred together. It's going to be a big mishmash. So you're going to teach of the, and then I stop right there, and then I add united. And then after that, we're going to add that whole idea of states. And then we're going to stop right there and then add that of America. And again, articulate it clearly and go slowly as we get through it. And to the, and we can stop right there. We can phrase it there. Republic, and we just teach that word one at a time, individual word. And as we go through, again, we get all of those small words and small differences. Eventually, they will get to the point that they can say it fluidly and fluently. But if we go too fast, it's going to end up in a big slur. One time, and I tell this story every year in training, so I'm sure that you've all heard it before. One time, I had the oldest 3-year-olds, and I was very excited about the fact that we were almost at the end of the pledge. And I got so excited that I went a little too fast, like right at the end. And so we were on the playground. Oh, and this group was, they were an interesting group. So I had taught them about the different symbols of our country. And so one of the things I had taught them about was the bald eagle. Well, there were vultures that would come and fly around, and I guess they were picking the carcasses of the dead, a dead animal or whatever. But they were determined that those vultures were actually bald eagles. And so when we were out on the playground, they would see the vultures flying, think they were bald eagles, and start to say the pledge to it. And I realized that I had taught them too fast. When it comes to the pledge, when we got to the end and they said it with liberty and justice for frogs. So, those are the things where you get to it and you're like, oh, yeah. Okay, so we want to take our time with that. The next thing that we're going to talk about is the national anthem. And when I was in school, standard was not to salute during the national anthem. And that kind of tells you how old I am and how things, again, conventions have changed. Because now we would stand, salute, pledge, and then put our hand down by our side to sing the national anthem. It's still my habit to do that. And then I realize everybody else still has their hand on their heart and that I need to keep my hand on my heart because that has become the new convention of saluting all the way through the national anthem. And that is what we need to be teaching our kiddos, is to keep their hand on their heart as we sing our special song. And that is how I introduce the national anthem to the kids, is that we have a special song about our country, and we sing it to the flag. And, it's one of those, and I'll go through exactly what it talks about. It talks about how we fought to become our own country and to be free. And so we sing our special song to remember the people who fought to help us to be free. And then from there, then I start teaching it. And when we teach the Star Spangled Banner, we are going to teach it again very slow. So, for example, that first day when I am teaching the pledge and the Star Spangled Banner, I'm going to start off with stand, salute, pledge. I pledge, and then we're going to stop right there. And now we're going to sing our special song. Oh, say. And that's all we're going to do of those two. And we're going to get down the rhythm of how to start both of those. And it may very well be a week before I introduce anything further in either one of those activities. That we just get used to how it feels and to join us together as a group. Now, one of the reasons that I like to start circle time with the Pledge of Allegiance and the Star Spangled Banner is that it helps the children, it helps signal the fact that we're going to function as a group. It focuses them and pulls them together into that uniform activity. And it signals the start of work time. And so expecting and having reverence for and beginning our circle that way, it sets a tone for the rest of the group learning time that is very valuable. Now, when I teach the national anthem, I'm going to start with the O say, and then I'm probably just going to add the can you see, and I'll stop there and hang out for a while. 2-3 days, maybe a week, maybe longer, because I want them all to get all of those words. Then I probably will add just by the dawns and stop right there. And then add early and light and stop right there. And I'm going to wait and see if they can get all of that, if we really have that, and before I move on to introducing a second line. And go on from there. Now, I always say this in training, and I want to make sure that I say it today. If you do not know the national anthem, if you do not, in particular, if you do not know the tune to the national anthem, you should have it on the music recording in the classroom. But if you don't, please ask us for a copy of it, a CD, a DVD, whatever, a digital copy. Do not make up your own tune. I've actually had a teacher who was not a U.S.-born citizen, and she didn't know the national anthem, and I didn't think to say anything about it. And she taught the kids the words because they were in her book, but she didn't have any clue about the tune, so she just made one up. That's not what we want to do. We want to use the actual real one. And I'm going to tell you right now that the national anthem is a really hard song to sing. And I sound terrible when I sing it. I sound like a duck that is being slaughtered. It does not matter. The kids don't care. They don't care at all. And if you do a good job teaching them the song, then you won't even have to sing along by open house in the spring. And you won't have to sing in front of adults. Then it's just the children who can carry it all on their own. So, that's one incentive to get through teaching the song really well. Any other questions, or is there anything I've forgotten to cover about the national anthem? All right, the next thing that we are going to do in our group lesson time is to pray. And the prayer here is, I believe, one of the most important aspects of the day. And it is not meant to be a rush through a prayer because everybody's already got their food and it's time to eat. This is the opportunity that we have to teach the children how to pray. So in addition to my flag holder, I have a prayer leader. And it may or may not be the same one. It's just going to depend on the number of children that I have and the amount of time that I want to devote to changing kids back and forth from the seat. I may use one helper for all of Circle just to be a little faster. Or I may, if I have younger children, I may have multiple helpers because they can't wait to have a turn for 18 days. That's a long time. To wait for it to be their turn. 3 weeks is a very long time to go through being a helper. And so with that, we want to train the students to lead. And this is a very slow process. The first day, we're going to teach the children how the prayer leader functions. And so the prayer leader is going to come up and stand next to me, and I'm going to teach the children how to show reverence, that when we pray, we're going to lower our head, we're going to fold our hands, that you can fold your hands this way, or you can fold your hands this way. And either one is fine. Does God still know that you're talking to him? Yes. And why do we fold our hands? We fold our hands so that we don't forget and start to play with them, that they help us to remember that what we're doing is talking to God. And is there anything magic that happens when we fold our hands? Does God listen to us better when our hands are folded? No, that's not what happens. But folding our hands is a way that we show that we're not doing anything else except focusing on and talking to God. And that we need to remember to stay focused on talking to God while we're praying. Then from there, I'm going to teach them to follow me in prayer. So I will say the words and they will repeat the words. And so, for example, in the early days, my prayer might be as simple as, and I'm going to say it, you repeat it after me. Dear God, thank you for this day.
Thank you for this day.
Thank you for mommies and daddies.
Thank you for mommies and daddies.
Thank you for school.
Thank you for school.
Thank you for popsicles.
Thank you for popsicles.
Please help us
Please help us
be good.
be good.
Amen.
Amen.
And I do usually try to include a thank you for something that they're going to be excited about. Now, the first day, I almost always thank God for mommies and daddies. And the second day, I always change it up. I always say thank you for our family. Thank you for our parents. And the reason is that if you do not deliberately change your language, then they will tell you for the rest of the year, you forgot to say mommies and daddies. We didn't say thank you for mommies and daddies. And because I want them to understand.
Donkeys.
Donkeys?
Cody's praying for donkeys right now.
Oh, bless his heart. And so if we don't establish that precedence from the beginning that the prayer sounds different every day, then they will get stuck on something. Our eventual goal is to have the children capable of leading prayer. So that means that the next step after I have gotten them to learn to repeat the prayer after me is that I will have a prayer leader who comes and stands by me. Miss Erin, would you come be my prayer leader? Thank you. So when we're leading prayer with this one, I am going to stand next to the prayer leader, and she's not ready to lead prayer yet. You know, she wants to be the prayer leader, and they're excited to help, but she's not ready to come up with that. That's a lot of pressure for a kid. So in this instance, I'm going to take my prayer leader, and I'm going to whisper to her and cue her so she can cue you. Are you ready to do it with me? Dear God.
Dear God,
Dear God,
Thank you for this day.
thank you for this day.
Thank you for this day.
Thank you for mommies
Thank you for mommies
and babies.
and babies.
All right, so here you can see that we have a 3-part repetition, okay? But again, I am getting you used to following her voice, and I'm helping her to understand what it's like to be the one that leads in prayer. Now, Super Sally she's going to get it right away. You can go ahead and sit down. She's going to get it right away. She's going to be ready to lead prayer on day 2, right? But Slow Joe, he's going to get up there and he is going to freeze. And so you need to establish, even with Super Sally, that first we go, I lead the prayer. Then I prompt you, and then you say it. And then the third step is the child is ready to lead the prayer themselves. even if you have kids in your room who don't necessarily need the second step, everybody needs to go through that step so that it is socially acceptable, that everybody sees that opportunity to accept that prompting and have that. And eventually, our goal is that the children know how to lead a group prayer. The first thing that we're going to do is we are going to teach them what our opening is. Do we have to say, "Dear God," every time? Absolutely not. We can talk about all of the different names that we have for God. We can say Heavenly Father, and
Dear Lord.
yes, yeah, dear Lord. We can even talk about, especially if we've been singing songs where we use phrases like Hosanna or Emmanuel or, so on and so forth. Those songs, those are great. All of those different names that we have for God, those are fabulous. And then the next thing that we want to do is that we want to teach them to give thanks, and for them to be genuinely grateful for that which they have in their hearts. And that may be donkeys that they're grateful for right now. I've had a child who would not eat broccoli or carrots or asparagus or whatever, and yet that's what he was grateful for every day, and that's what he wanted to thank God for. I don't know why you would thank God for food you were not willing to eat, but that was what he wanted to say when it was his turn, and that's fine. Sometimes we do get I get a little tickled at the things that they're grateful for, but at the same time, as long as they are not purposefully being silly, and it's genuine, then that is absolutely fine, and we are all going to show support. Now, if a child is being silly as they're leading prayer, if they're looking for the laugh, then we need to stop the prayer and take over for them, because that's not acceptable. We don't want them to turn that time of reverence into a time of silliness. Eventually, we want them to learn to be able to voice requests for help. If somebody is sick, or if somebody is sad that we need help. If you'll see here, the next one is repentance. And repentance is very difficult to teach. It may not be something that you can teach within your school year. They may not be ready to express that they're sorry when they do wrong. But it is the natural step within it. And then, of course, we want to teach a closing. So at the beginning of the year, we may very simply have an opening, thank yous, and a closing. Then we would add in that help us to make good choices, help us to take a good nap, help Maria to feel better tomorrow, so help Jacob's puppy not be hurt anymore. Whatever it is that they have brought up that is their concern and their priority, they get help. Asking God for help pretty easily. But the repentance, the idea of saying that you're sorry for for the things that you've done that are wrong, that's a much more complicated thing, and it may not be until the end of the year, or even not at all within their year with you, that they're ready to understand how to do that. Yes.
One of the things that I did, and you can tell me if this is wrong or not, but I would tell them, please help me to make good choices today, but please forgive me if I don't.
There you go. That's excellent language. Help me make good choices and forgive me if I don't. Yeah, that's absolutely. Now I'm going to tell you that language that you've used is very sophisticated. And the idea of, if I don't make good choices, there's an implication there. Like as adults, we understand the if I don't, what comes next.
Well, I always add make good choices for the children, because
Yes.
I know they're like, if I don't want.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And even that word if, that's a very difficult word for them. But it's great to expose them to that language and to talk them through that we want to be forgiven for that God forgives us, and that we need to forgive each other. And these are great things. And sometimes you'll have a child who it's their turn to lead in prayer, and eventually they'll say things like, "Forgive me for pushing Sally," and that's great. And what's really funny when the entire class says, "Forgive me for pushing Sally" after, and they're so trained to and that's okay. we can all ask for forgiveness for Jacob for pushing Sally or whatever. But yes, absolutely, that idea that we've done wrong and that we need to be forgiven for it. It's a big thing. Now, of course, in most churches, the age of accountability is about the age of 7. And so they're not really going to understand this process at the 4-year-old year. They're just not. But we don't just magically turn on that understanding at the age of 7. We grow into it by practicing it, by being modeled that behavior, and by modeling that behavior ourselves all the way through. We have to develop that sense, not just, it doesn't just, magically turn on.
Ms. Green, I think hearing how you say it, when kids hear the language throughout the years, if they're hearing it from 2, that, why wasn't that choice? Why wasn't that a good choice? And they're repeating it back. They're acknowledging, what they didn't do. So by the time, I think, building to 4, they may not get it in the sense of a 7-year-old, but I think they may have a feel of
They know what
that,
they know what it means to not make a good choice.
Yeah.
And oftentimes by 4, they can be genuinely sorry that they made a bad choice, especially if there have been some kind of negative consequences to it. And I don't necessarily mean punishment. I mean somebody got hurt, or something broke. They didn't listen, and they got hurt, or a friend got hurt, or something broke, or the donkey got out and ran down the street, and mom and dad had to chase it. And they can be genuinely sorry for having done wrong. That's not something that waits until 7. It can help them to process it. To know that apologizing for that is crucial to it.
And one more question, Ms. Green. The rhetorical grace, that whole God is great, God is great.
Yes. Okay.
What age is that over with?
In my personal opinion, I am fine with our children never learning that prayer poem. God is great, God is good, let us thank him for it. I don't care if it fell out of the lexicon. And I say that every year in training. Don't teach your kids that. We don't need to say it. But I don't forbid you from you teaching it. And I'm not going to jump into your classroom and stop you from using it if you say it at prayer at snack time. But I am going to tell you that at prayer at circle time and at prayer at mealtime, we need to have a genuine prayer. And that poem does not substitute for genuine prayer. Now, I would be very happy if you had only genuine prayers at all of them. But at actual breakfast, at actual lunch, at actual circle time, in that learning time, take the time and have a real prayer. I know sometimes, especially if you're dealing with like older children coming in off of the playground or out off of school buses, and you're trying to get out the door to, or get them to homework club and they need to snack quickly, that is an easy thing to fall back on. Still not my favorite, but I understand, and that's sort of acceptable. But other than that, we need to use real prayers with our students. All right, we'll go ahead and stop there for today, and I will see y'all tomorrow. We'll pick up with the 7 days of the week.